the game of Go, or as some people like to call it, Chinese chess, even though it was invented in Japan. Anyway, this is a thinking man's game. You really have to think about your moves and where you're going to go and way ahead of what's going to happen. Something I'm pretty sure that Kevin Stitt isn't able to do. If I was to ever play this game with him, I think he'd probably lose, given the outcome of certain things he's done and executive orders that haven't quite panned out the way he thought they would. Hi, and welcome to Across the Desk. This will actually be the last episode of the season as we're coming on Memorial Weekend. And even though it's going to be a short season, I was thinking, why is the season so short? Well, the legislators started late here in Oklahoma, and I usually like to open up the beginning of the season with the opening of the new session of Congress of our state legislature here in Oklahoma, which they start a little late. So we're going to cut this off a little early. Well, at the same time we normally do, just not as many episodes. Anyway, a couple of interesting things happen when it comes to our governor, Kevin Stitt. We've always known he was a boob. He's always been like the Custer's Last Stand guy when he went up against the 35 tribes, about 4 or 5 years ago, and got his butt handed to him. Why? Well, because he has the inability to think ahead. And that's pretty much what we get here with executive orders that he has passed, especially when it comes to DEI, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, one of the consequences of this is OU has shut down what's called the New Leadership Program. What is the New Leadership Program? Well, what it does is it's an incubator for future women leaders. Well, with anti-DEI legislation, we really just can't have that in Oklahoma. But Kevin Stitt, being the derp he is, not being able to think ahead, I mean, this guy really probably made all season high school. I'm just going to take a guess, step out on a limb and say he didn't do so good. Because here we are, he's having to come back trying to defend his executive order on anti-DEI executive order he did. And because it came out that he's not against women in the workforce. Oh, I want more women in politics. I want more women in our oil and gas leadership and everything else. I don't want less. This isn't my consequence. This isn't what I wanted to happen. But it is, you see, because that is inclusion. That's equity among women. It's including women. And his anti-DEI executive order totally does cut that out. It's against the law. It goes against everything that's in his executive order. Well, I didn't mean to do that. And then he comes out, and this is where you know he can't think ahead. Because he came out and said, you know what, I'm not against women. It's the racist in me that put this out because I don't want race-based stuff. I don't want these other races, these Latinos and these blacks getting a leg up on white, male, Christian, conservative men. And that's basically what it is. See, Kevin Stitt, he doesn't like to play fair. He can't play fair. He's all season high school, so he has to have some kind of advantage. And if he can make it by putting other people down and making obstacles for them and making things for his white butt easier to accomplish, well, yeah, so be it. That's just how he wants to do things. So that's Kevin Stitt. So here we have this anti-DEI executive order he put out, and we have an unintended consequence because he lacks the ability to think ahead. He lacks the ability to sit there and really understand, get into his brain, start thinking ahead to see what kind of consequences is going to become of his actions that he does. He didn't see it coming. He even says, hey, you know, I didn't mean for this. This was not my intention, to do this with this. I wanted to stop the race stuff. I didn't want these other races to get a leg up on me. So, and it's like he tries to step off of one landmine and steps on another. No, it's not that I'm misogynist. It's that I'm a racist. And it just comes off really bad. Even Leslie Osborne was just like, oh, I can't believe this. And if you know who Leslie Osborne is, she is a Republican. She has been in politics since 2010. Remember the Tea Party wave stuff? She was all about that. She's the one who put in legislation to make sure that you paid more excise tax and that your tags are more expensive if you have a hybrid or electric car in Oklahoma. Yeah, she's the one who did that because she said elections have consequences. We don't want liberals here. And if they're here, we want to make it hard for them to live here. And that's pretty much what she said 2010. Of course, here we are 15 years later, and she's really chilled out a lot. I guess she's met some Democrats by now and realized that they're not all horrible people, liberals and everybody else. Okay, they're not horrible. They live here. And she's really chilled out a lot. And she said something. It goes about this cutting out the new leadership program from OU, says this has far-reaching effects into things that are very important to shape the future of our state and country. Oklahoma Labor Commissioner Leslie Osborne said, so if the goal is to only make sure that we have young white men run for every office, young white straight Christian men, then I guess we're accomplishing our goal. I personally don't believe that should be the goal of our state. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. Come on. When it comes to women in Oklahoma, we are number 50. Just like education, we are dead last when it comes to protections for women, when it comes to domestic violence against women, when it comes to legal protections for women, when it comes to women buying property, getting loans, getting education, when it comes to women being physically abused, raped, and everything else, well, Oklahoma is the place for that to happen. If you're an incel, involuntary celibate, what they call them, Oklahoma is your paradise. Because you can dang near do just about anything to a woman you can. And it's kind of crazy because you know what? There's absolutely some transgenders out there that transgender from female to male in Oklahoma. And the reason why is because women get crapped on here. That's what they say. Hey man, women get crapped on here. I'd rather be a guy in Oklahoma than a female. So there you go. That's all these conservatives are doing is making these women want to be men. And that's part of this whole deal. That's a consequence that happens. They're trying to stop this transgender stuff. They're trying to stop the gays. And that's part of that too, right? We don't want to include these people. We want to exclude these people. So Kevin Stitt sees government. He sees Oklahoma and he sees you having a business or anything else and as an exclusive club, only deemed proper for guys like me, a middle-aged white guy with blue eyes who can't tan, I guess. I'm not religious, so that cuts me out of a lot of stuff, and I'm pretty much registered independent with liberal leaning, so, there you go. I deserve to be abused in this state. That's how he feels about it. I mean, it really is. That's why we have DEI actions going on. That's why we have these senators, crazy as they can be, wanting to control women. Dusty Devers, for instance, wants to outlaw porn, make it a felony, 20 years in prison if you're just sexting with another adult consensually who you're not married to. That's just loopy. And why? Well, because he's a big-time Christian and he wants to make sure you are too, against your First Amendment rights, because he really doesn't care about the Constitution. He even says so. Hey, Jesus is my Lord, not the Constitution or the United States. That's exactly kind of where he stands on things. He could care less about a Constitution. It's the Bible he cares about. That's number one for him. They really believe in this caste system of government like India has, where religious leaders are at the top, police and military are next, business owners, depending on how wealthy you are, and then the working class underneath that, and depending on where you reside on the tier, depends on how much freedoms and rights you get. It really does. And this is where they're at. This is why we have this anti-DEI executive order they're using. Because you see, it all comes down to this. They don't want other people to get a leg up. They want to keep them down. See, these people are competition. And to a fragile, white, dumb guy like Kevin Stitt, he needs all the advantages he can get. Like I said earlier, the guy can't think more than 2 moves ahead, obviously. Same thing with this ESG stuff. Okay, so we have this environmental and governance other stuff that they want to get rid of too, right? And that's another thing where we go. So it's like, oh, this is about the oil industry. The oil industry, it's our most important industry. Saying, okay, so we're beholden to the oil and gas industry in Oklahoma, and they really believe this. They are the most important industry. Even the Oklahoma Petroleum Alliance comes out and says, we're the most important industry. We deserve all the perks and breaks before anybody else. See, it's this anti-DEI stuff. Again, that's what that is. See, they want to say they're the most important, not agriculture, not energy as a whole, not manufacturing or anything else. Oil and gas, which is crazy on its face because, see, Oklahoma, we give our resources away. I mean, if it's so important, why are we giving it away? Because that's what we do. We don't tax it. Companies from Texas come in with their employees from Texas, drill our oil, take it back to Texas, where Texas gets to tax everything. They get to tax the labor, they get to tax the oil, they get to do all this stuff against these companies, income tax on the companies that are there, and Oklahoma gets a partly 2 or 3%. That's it. So they get to rape our resources, take it down to Texas, and they get all the GDP, and then we're sitting here wondering, how come Oklahoma is such a low GDP state if it's got all this oil? Well, that's because we give all our resources to Texas. And our conservative, bought and paid for legislatures, politicians are more than happy to give it to them. You see, because here's what they do. They got billions of dollars down in Texas, these oil companies. And if they'll give our politicians just a little pat on the back and a little, kindness, well, then they'll go ahead and give them the rest of it. I got mine. That's what it is, right? That's how Republicans always are. I got mine, screw you. And that's pretty much what this all is. This anti-DEI, the anti-ESG stuff. That's all this is. It's protecting a few at the expense of everybody else. And that's exactly what we're doing here. That's exactly what we're doing this. We have a bunch of cowardly conservatives running around trying to protect their own interest, their own small minority interest against everybody else. And especially women. I mean, come on, man. This has got to be one of the worst moves ever. Women outnumber men when it comes to voting, even in Oklahoma. So those are the people you kind of want to, at least pander to a little bit. You want to look out for their interest a little. And yet, Oklahoma is 50th in the nation when it comes to women issues, when it comes to women's health care, when it comes to women's unemployment, when it comes to women equal pay, which is also part of the anti-DEI legislation, right? So, equality, oh, no. They don't get equal pay. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest disparities between men and women's pay is in Oklahoma. You won't find it hardly anywhere else. We got the biggest disparity of pay between men and women in Oklahoma. We absolutely do. They do have worse health care. They have worse health care outcomes. They outlawed abortion for anything. They want to outlaw contraception and anything else. As a matter of fact, unless you're just dying, you got to be dying. You're not going to get an abortion. If it's going to just wreck you, if it's going to keep you from having kids in the future, or if it's going to actually harm you and make you sick for months, well, that's okay to a conservative because it's not going to kill you. So that's okay. Even if the child isn't viable, if it still has a heartbeat, people like James Langford say you need to carry that to term. His God has demanded you do it. His God, not yours or anybody else's. His God and his particular version of his God. You see, because Christianity has a lot of different views. It has a lot of different sects in it. So, but James Langford believes his is the only one and you need to follow. It's a virtual Dunning-Kruger effect on the right, especially when it comes to this DEI and all this stuff. So unintended consequences. Here we go. Governor Kevin Stitt doesn't understand looking ahead. He has no vision. The guy lacks the ability to have vision, obviously. When he went after the tribes and got his butt handed to him, it cost Oklahoma millions of dollars to defend our state against the tribes, and they ended up winning. Really, they ended up winning, and so many millions were wasted on his frivolous Custer Last Stand type crusade he went on. And so now the relationship with the state and the tribes have never been worse. Thank you, Kevin Stitt. You're such a boob. Now, we have this comes out, and an unintended consequence is, well, you got rid of the new leadership program, which is designed for women in leadership to get them into politics so they can understand how to get into politics, how to know the ropes of politics, and how to protect themselves as women in the rough and tumble field of politics. Not only that, also business and everything else. So here you go. And then Kevin Stitt comes out and just pretty much admits, oh, that wasn't my intention. I love women. I want them to do well here. But, the problem with that is the proof is in the pudding. When you look at the legislation that's been passed, the legislation they've tried to pass, and the bills that Kevin Stitt has signed into law and the executive actions he has taken, the opposite is absolutely true. When we're ranked 51 when it comes to the states and territories for women, you got an issue. You got one that you just made a whole lot worse. And that's where we stand in Oklahoma. We're pretty much at the bottom of everything. We're number 43 in the nation of states when it comes to all categories. When it comes to all categories, education, healthcare, pay, equal pay, representation, anything else, we're number 43. So Kevin Stitt says Oklahoma needs to be a top 10 state. Well, we're top 10, all right, as long as you're counting from the bottom of the list. Well, this is Across the Desk for this season. And give us a couple of months and we'll be back for season number 10. Right in time for all the election stuff going on when all the campaigns start to really happen. See ya.